Hi. That was my opening act. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm Mike Smit, a faculty member here at Dalhousie, and my scholarly work is in managing research data. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of that to you in a few short minutes this afternoon. I do manage ocean research data. Oceanographers and marine biologists and those who work with oceans data are in that happy group of users who have recognized the need to have their data managed, much like the example that Jeff started with, where they're saying, oh, we cannot deal with the volume of data because they're collecting it in new and wonderful ways, far more than they were able to even a decade ago. So we have autonomous gliders that go out in the water for up to months at a time, both beaming data back via satellite, but also recording it to an onboard hard drive for later analysis. They put tags in animals and deploy them to capture data not only about that animal's whereabouts, but other animals that they might encounter, or the jaw movements of the animal. There's a deep sea cycler shown at the bottom there. Argo floats are tossed in the water, and there's thousands of them, and they collect data. Buoys are collecting data. This is a picture of a radar installation at the Bay of San Francisco. All of these different devices are collecting data in increasing volumes in different formats by different people, by different agencies, and ocean data management is concerned with bridging it all. So I, for you, have a tale of two networks. The title, it really diverges from the tale of two cities in every other way, but there's something about that phrasing that I like. There's MEOPAR, which is an NCE here in Canada focused on marine environmental observation, prediction, and response. And there's CIUs, which I will talk about momentarily. So MEOPAR is based here at Dalhousie. It is multidiscipline, multi-sector, so it funds research in the natural sciences and the social sciences. And every fall there is a new call for funding. Last fall, about $3.5 million in funding was awarded by the network to new projects, bringing them on board to further the research goals of the network. Within MEOPAR, I'm the PI for something called the Ocean Data Management Project, and that has three main tasks. The first one is community of practice. The second one is internal advocacy around data management, and the third is RDM mandate and support. And I want to talk about MEOPAR. I think in the agenda it says I'm going to talk about CIUs, but I'm throwing MEOPAR in here because we're doing on a small scale what the funding agencies are interested in doing on a national scale, and it's very different in a lot of ways, but also similar in some ways. So I'll share a little bit about our experience in the hopes that it is helpful. So first, the community of practice on ocean data management links established centers of high-quality ocean data management to share best practices, promote cooperation, and in general build the social glue that's required to build large collaborative networks. Our goal is a shared vision for ocean data management in Canada. We have a lovely little website and lots of participating organizations. I actually stepped out of this meeting to participate in a quarterly phone call with this group of people, which has really gelled and has really benefited from their shared experience being in this community of practice. Advocacy. So we do some advocacy inside MEOPAR. I wanted to share 3 tips for advocating for effective research data management practice based on this limited experience I have doing it across fields, across a national network. The first one is to reflect the actual needs of the network. So we collected a lot of data from the network and essentially fed it back to them and said, remember what you told us about data management? We're here to help you make it real. Which is my second point, help them understand that what we're talking about is real and important. And finally, grab attention. So when you're talking about grabbing attention, data management is not the most exciting thing in the world, and I think it's important to acknowledge up front that some of the stuff you're going to say is boring. I think you just have to accept that. It's boring, but it's important and it's worthwhile. If you try to pretend that everything you have to say about RDM is fascinating, no one will believe you. I have a few high-impact charts that I use, left alone the half-life of research data is 4 years. Which really speaks to this idea that science and research gives you immortality. Well, not your data. So there's value in putting effort into ensuring that that data is effectively managed and preserved. And oh, my picture here is completely gone. It's a picture of someone swimming in ice-filled water. And there's this belief that if you just start doing research data management, it gets easier. But I'm not sure that that's true. So I don't try to sell anyone on the fact that, sure, it's cold, but you get used to it eventually. I don't think you ever quite get used to it, but you can make it a part of your processes, and you can realize the benefits that come from doing that. And finally, I advise them to document your data as if the person reusing it is a violent psychopath who knows where you live. So these kinds of things gather far more interest and far more attention and are more memorable in terms of my advocacy than just standing up and saying the tri-agency says so, so you got to do it. And what we found is that people respond fairly well to this gentle advocacy. Man data, oh, that's funny. We already have mandate for Neopar. Is if you're applying for funding, you're sending us a summary of your data management plan, and we're reviewing that as part of our review of your overall application. We give some tips on what to include. We ask them to comply with Neopar's data policy, and we advise them that if they are funded, we are going to need to see, vet, and approve a complete data management plan before you see a single dollar of the money you've been awarded, which we, after a lot of thought and analysis, figured was probably the right time to do it. It's funded, so it's real, and you start thinking about how to execute it. That's the time when you really want that full-length policy. And so this is the mandate put in place in Neopar. A lot of change management went into doing that. I have the unique advantage of every year all of the researchers get together at the annual meeting, so we have an easier change management process than, for example, the cross-country tour that Jeff and the Tri-Councils have been on over the last couple of months. But it is a very similar process when you're asking for something you haven't asked for before. But that mandate also comes with support. So we review these data management plan summaries. We'll review them in advance of application, but we also review them after to ensure that they are complying with the data policy. When it comes time to building the full data management plan, we're referring researchers to local services first, but we're available to provide, first of all, specialized oceans expertise, which some of them need, but also to be a service of last resort if their local service isn't able to accommodate them or isn't set up yet to provide that kind of coaching. And finally, practical help to manage and deposit data, including doing some data rescue. So this is just coming online now. I have this screenshot at the bottom because no one believed I actually put something called Data Force 1 in a funding proposal. But Data Force 1 is a Neopar team whose role is to actually provide data management support on both the policy side and the technology side, ensuring that people have the help that they need to manage and deposit their data. Another missing image. That's great. We'll skip it. This one, despite saying it's missing, is actually there. The CIUS is the Canadian Integrated Ocean Observing System. It's under development. It's a national collaboration. And I'm particularly talking about the Atlantic node, where our immediate mandate is around engaging end users and stakeholders. But let's go back to this idea of an integrated ocean observing system. If you look at the global ocean observing system, there are a lot of integrated OOSes, OOSI. I don't know the plural for OOS, I'm afraid. OOSes, Eurogoose, Goose Africa, IMOS around Australia. The US has USIUS, and there's this big gap around the country with the world's longest coastline. And that's always been a source of national embarrassment for us. And so we're finally at a point where we're prepared to start moving CIUs forward and to say, we need one of these. We need something that integrates the data from our own coasts so that we can participate in this global observation system. And that's not to say we don't have great ocean data and we're not managing it effectively. There's a distributed pool of expertise. And that distributed pool this past year produced some investigative evaluations defining what an integrated ocean observing system would look like for Canada from a cyber infrastructure, metadata, visualization, and governance perspective. And starting this year, MEOPAR and DFO will be funding the development of a prototype CIUS, which involves regional nodes, Atlantic, Pacific, and Central to start, with Central primarily being about the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the St. Lawrence River. But all of these partners are involved in trying to define it, and the next stage is reaching out more broadly to more stakeholders to say, how do you see yourself being part of this envisioned national infrastructure? Here's a governance diagram that you should not pay a whole lot of attention to. And then just some final closing notes. In addition to these two networks, one of the things that we've identified is the need for a pipeline of students and graduates with this kind of training. So we're doing a few things on that front. The Ocean Data Management Community of Practice brings undergraduate students and a few graduate students to summer work term placements for 4 months, immersing them in an ocean data management center somewhere in Canada. We have 6 or 7 that do just outstanding work, and we want these students to see that, to learn that with very practical hands-on experience. We also developed, in collaboration with the Dalhousie Libraries, a new course for our MLIS students on managing research data, offered for the first time last fall. So there are now out there walking around 9 students about to graduate with an MLIS who have some training in managing research data. I'm just saying. And one of them's at the back, Kylie. And various one-off opportunities, trying to ensure that we have people who are ready for supporting ocean data management. And of course, there's a lot of active data integration analysis viz projects where we're trying to take data to the next level beyond management to what are we doing with it. There's some machine learning work, there's some visualization work, there's integrating observations and predictive models and all sorts of cool stuff that I absolutely don't have time to talk about. But there you have it. That is the whirlwind introduction to 2 networks and a whole bunch of research data management. I probably don't have time for questions. Do I have time for questions?
Sure. I'd love to attend a ocean data management boot camp or some other 1 week, 2 week, something. Just as a training, learning opportunity.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. So some things like that are done kind of informally right now, and they tend to be advertised within a local community. So the Ocean Tracking Network based here at Dal does a 1 week intensive, here's how you use our stuff and our tools, but it's not general ocean data management. So absolutely we should think about doing that. Yeah.
DFO is one of your co-funders, but they're not governed by your data management granting rules.
Yes.
And they're one of the worst offenders
Yep.
for their own database. So are they going to bring their databases up to the MEOPAR standards?
That I can't promise, but we do have that commitment that DFO data will be part of CIUS. Because one of their key value adds is getting this data off of desktops and out into the world, and allowing you to access DFO data other than through submitting a web form and waiting for someone to FedEx you punch cards or whatever it is they're using to distribute data now. Anyone from DFO in the room?
It is being recorded.
No, and they're very aware of this, and they are part of our community of practice, and we do have these kinds of conversations around.
That's another question is, where do they get funding to bring their resources up to, up to speed? Because like in the same situation with, Research Data Canada has funding streams, Mary does,
Yep.
but those don't solve the problems with government data sets, which
Yeah.
are major.
Yeah, and long-term CIUs will have to be a DFO budget line, right? If you have a national data network, you need to have that commitment, I think. And so the first 3 years is about establishing a prototype and building something that works and can demonstrate success to move towards that point. And then between CIUs and their federal geospatial platform requirements, we're hoping that some of this data will finally see the light of day.
Can you approach this from the Open Government, Open Data Canada, because Treasury Board has a large mandate that says this stuff should be in standardized formats so it can be made openly accessible, but it doesn't apply to their own science resources.
Yes, that's absolutely true. So that's a loophole that you could drive a semi-truck through, and they exploit it ruthlessly. But at the same time, that spirit of open data is penetrating government, I believe. And certainly the people that we're working with at DFO are pretty passionate about ensuring that this data is part of DFO's commitment to open data and to open information, regardless of a TBS mandate or not.
Treasury Board may have money. I'm sure that the science departments have never thought of that happening because it's not one of their own rules.
It's politically tricky because of the federal geospatial platform and how it's tied to TBS. So I leave it to them to navigate those troubled waters, if you'll pardon the ocean's pun. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Just on that, there are DG's council of the science departments and agencies that it's an open science council where they're getting a little more traction. So it's a useful conversation to intersect.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think CIUS was presented to that council in December. So that is also part of the here's what we're bringing to the table conversation. Yeah. It was sometime. Yeah.
Do you see a role for some of the infrastructure that's been developed within, say, the library community or Canada as perhaps being helpful or
oh yeah,
integrated with CO?
I should be scolded for not mentioning that. So CIUS doesn't have a preservation mandate. CIUS is about I feel tethered to this desk. CIUS has a mandate to preserve data for 5 years after the end of the project. And it can be, through curation decisions, kept in the infrastructure for longer than that, but a preservation partnership is called for to help preserve that. And I'm looking at Lee Wilson while I'm saying this. But yeah, absolutely. What we do with CIUS is, when you know very specific things about the data, for example, that it follows the climate and forecast variable naming standards, or that it's net CDF, or that it's geospatial, or that it's time series, there's a lot more specialized stuff that you can do with it other than shipping it to people as a blob. And so that's our focus. But there will absolutely need to be a link between FERDR and CIUS so that if you're going to FERDR to discover data, you're not missing this vast section of data. And Lee and I have talked about this before, that this discipline-specific thing is necessary and valuable, but we can't lose sight of the need for this data to be as discoverable as possible. And the Federation of Metadata really makes that feasible now in a way that it would have been far more difficult to do. They're tired of me, so.
Okay, I guess I'll get started. I'm going to hold on to my mic and my clicker. So I'm Erin MacPherson. I'm the Research Data Management Librarian at Dalhousie. I'm going to talk about our research data repository, Dataverse, but I'm also going to talk about the what, why, and how this fits overall into our research data management services and how it was developed. It's just a piece of the larger puzzle.
Down.
Down. Oh. Down, and I kept pressing up. Okay. So a long time ago, we didn't have a research data repository, and that was fine at the time. I think. Sure. But we knew the policies and procedures were being developed by various organizations, the tri-agencies, journals, lots of places were coming in with new initiatives and new policies and procedures. There were other repositories available. There's subject repositories. We've got Scholars Portal and Harvard, but we decided to implement our own. And the first thing I said is we did it because we could, which sounds maybe a little bit arrogant, but it sounds better than what I was told. Erin, we need you to get a Dataverse up and running. So, yeah, I had to do it, and plus we can do it. So that's kind of the positive way. We had the resources to do it. but also it's an established software used nationally and internationally, specifically for research data. It can be branded for our institution and for other institutions who may partner with us or may work with us. Plus, it's a great community to work with. It's an open source community, open to feedback and suggestions. So Amber gave a great overview of Dataverse, but quickly, free open source web application developed by IQSS at Harvard, designed specifically for research data, and you can share, preserve, and find data, and so on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our team at Dal, and it's growing, and everything I'm going to talk about is kind of, I would say it's living, subject to change. So the RDM team, not just Dataverse, includes Sarah Stevenson, who's the AUL Research Services, myself. We have folks from ATS, our Academic Technology Services, and we also work with other ATS staff. We've got Lee Wilson, a great resource here at Dal, so we've been bringing him into our monthly meetings. Dalhousie Research Services, we have a good relationship with them. They're usually at our meetings and very open to communication. And senior administrators within the libraries and Dalhousie. But we've also branched out beyond that. So we're involved in CAAL organizations, CAAL, so many acronyms. We participate in CAAL, Digital Preservation and Stewardship Group, the Portage Dataverse North Working Group, we have a few of us on that, Portage Preservation Expert Group, and we're growing. We're hoping to get our liaison librarians involved, and also our UL Donna Horn-Tyson has struck institutional, Donna can correct me, data management group for Dalhousie, or data management committee for Dalhousie. We had our first meeting last summer, before the holidays. So services offered by the Dal libraries. As I mentioned, we do have Dataverse, but how does this fit? It's one thing to say, all right, we're going to implement Dataverse, but there are so many moving pieces in addition to that. So we offer some data management tools, the DMP Assistant, which is available to everyone, our Dalhousie Dataverse, which is our data repository, and we're also doing information resources and workshops, video tutorials, our RDM LibGuide, we have a research boot camp every year. And these services are growing, and again, we're participating in regional and national organizations to help develop more services. So how did we develop all this? Well, I really like planning. I don't know, it's just something I like. So what we did, we created a project charter, and I do have to thank my team, who's very big on that. Let's do a project charter. So comprised of work plan and task list, and also a Dataverse implementation list. So if we're going to do something, we want to know where it fits in the scheme of things and why we're doing it. We collaborated with other institutions and networked. So in Canada and North America, we looked at other universities, attended different conferences, RDAP, Casri Connect, the Dataverse community meeting. So this is just the front page of our project charter. Developed our objectives and scopes, deliverables, stakeholders and roles, governance and oversight. Who's managing this thing? What are some constraints? What resources do we need? Lots of them. Here's our Dataverse implementation task list. I need to write down everything I'm doing in order to, get a better understanding of it. So this is just, if anyone's thinking of doing it, I'm happy to share. But some of the things we had to look at when implementing our Dataverse, we had to have our own terms of use. Signing an agreement with DataSite Canada. Are we going to go with an older version? We're going to go, we wanted to go with the latest version of Dataverse. At the time was version 4.7. Now we are way beyond, we're going to 4.9. Is that right, Amber? I think so. Anyways, we're all right. We were behind a week after we implemented it. That's how fast the community can move. So testing involved, authentication, and so on. So a lot of moving parts. Here's what our Dataverse looks like right now. It's live, dataverse.library.dal.ca. We've got a demo version also. We have a few researchers in there. We have some people who haven't published yet, but they are using it in their lab, which is great. So we're just right now starting to get the word out. I think advocate is a good word, or educate. So let people know that we have this service available. This is a Dataverse workflow. Again, like I am a planner, I need to write down, every step we're going to do. Again, this is subject to change, but what happens when someone comes to me or anyone of the team and says, I have some data and I need to put it somewhere? This is kind of the workflow we designed. We don't have a ticketing system yet, so if anyone has a good one or has any ideas, let me know. But we get an email, we get a phone call, we get an in-person request. We speak to the researcher. Do we recommend data deposit at all? Should it go in our repository, subject repository, and the various, and afterwards, you know, we grant them a Dataverse, and they're responsible for maintenance after that part. We have what we call a mediated service, so they do have to contact us before a Dataverse can be set up, and then we will set one up for them and then assign them the appropriate role. And that's the way, the approach we're taking right now. Again, everything is subject to change, or to evolve. The other thing we looked at was creating our Dalhousie Libraries RDM toolkit. So it's basically a library subject guide with some resources. A lot of these emerged from Portage, and we're hoping to share. We've shared our video with Portage, and we've adapted some resources from them as well. Links to other tools and repositories, our DMP Assistant video tutorial, some training materials, the RDM guide for busy people, RDM data guide. And where to next? So we're looking at next steps. Now we've got it up and running. We're looking at building and expanding our team. So bringing in some liaison librarians, developing our committee, our terms of reference and roles, Dataverse and RDM promotion. So we do have our annual boot camp every year, but also doing outreach to the individual faculties. Also more policies, which is, oh, I don't want policies. They can be adapted. So we're looking at collections policies. It's something we've talked about today. Storage space, we need to look at that. Not right now, but definitely in the future. And also the preservation piece and Dataverse North. And I've left question marks on that because I did participate in Dataverse North, and you know, so basically we're keeping our ears open, and we're going to see what emerges from that. So if you're interested in learning more, you can contact myself or Sarah, or see us at APLA. So we'll be giving a talk about RDM in Atlantic Canada. Thank you.
Is there been a case where if a researcher comes to you with their data needs aren't yet met by Dataverse?
Their needs aren't met by Dataverse?
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a solution to one of those problems, and it's further. So that's where it is right now. I think the big thing is the health data, where it's confidential or sensitive data. Can that be, that's kind of where it would be an issue right now. And I think that in release Dataverse 5.0, they're supposed to have the data tags launched.
Yeah, that might help, but I think that figuring out what to do with sensitive data is a challenge.
It is. We have, I mean, Dataverse, you can always create the record in Dataverse and then create a license that goes with that, and you fill it out, and the researcher grants you request, and you can access the data, say, in person instead of hosting it online. But if they want to share sensitive data between researchers, we do have the online, I can't remember what it's called, one of the faculty members in here right now. I know I have the link for it. So, anyways, we do have an internal service at Dal to share data, like a file sharing. Yeah, but that's only one-way sharing. Like it's not a Dataverse type thing. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So does that sharing solution allow people outside of Dell to collaborate?
Well, it allows them to retrieve the data. So I can share data with, say, Amber in Ontario, but we have to have like a data sharing agreement and stuff. But it's, yeah, that would be the tool used instead of Dataverse. Okay, thank you.
So my presentation is both like and unlike Erin's. Like in that I'm going to be talking a little bit about who we are and what we've done with research data management, sort of in the early stages of developing services at UMB. Unlike in that I don't have any slides, but I think this will be fairly easy to follow along with. So what I'm hoping to do right now is just to give a bit of an overview of where we are with the development of our RDM services at UMB. We've been engaged with it for probably about a year and a half, but I'd still characterize what we're doing right now as sort of early stages. We're just beginning to start to work with researchers right now, but the few conversations that we've had initially have been very productive, and we're looking forward to doing more. This is really intended just to give an idea of who's involved, what we've been developing by way of service offerings, and how we're engaging with UMB's researchers and university administrators so far. So our working group, similar to what's happening at Dal, it's led by a working group at UMB Library. At this point, it's entirely within the library. So only librarians and library staff are involved now. We have 2 members of our library systems team, 1 developer and a manager of that department, our scholarly communications librarian, the data and GIS librarian, the head of the Center for Digital Scholarship, and myself. Not everyone in that group is intended to be sort of on the ground working face-to-face with researchers, but that's primarily the role of our scholarly communications librarian and our data librarian. There is also a spot on that committee that's intended for a science liaison, was previously filled by a science liaison, so we're going to have another person join really soon. There's also, I wanted to point out, the direct engagement from our technical team has really been critical to getting things up and running. Even though this is definitely more, if we've seen through a number of the discussions earlier on today, this is not just a technical problem. These are not just infrastructure problems. It's been our technical team that's been able to highlight issues, features, limitations, things that we need to be aware of that have really helped us shape and communicate more of our research data at UMB. So our focus has been on developing support and services in 3 main areas. General consultation, research data management planning, and data repository services. So in consultation, we're really looking at this as being a great opportunity to develop the library as a research partner. Ideally, this is not just about tools, it's not about space, it's not about a place to put stuff. This is really about developing a conversation with our researchers about their research, what the challenges, what their funding, support, what resources they're developing, plan for the future of those resources. Supporting research data management planning, we included supporting use of the Portage DMP Assistant. So far, we haven't had a whole lot of engagement with that aspect of things, but I think it's because the conversations that we've started to have been with researchers that are already partway along their journey. They've got some data that they're ready to share, or they're almost ready to share, and they're starting to think about things like how to get their thing published. In our data repository services, we certainly think it's part of our responsibility to let people know about what disciplinary or discipline-specific repos are available and advise appropriately. But we also provide local repository space for our data sets. Like Dal and a number of other people that we heard from today, we're using Dataverse as repository software at UMB. Everything's installed and maintained by the library. A little like Erin said, we did it because we could. Haven't had any reason not to do it. We're open to having conversations with the campus IT services, but it hasn't really happened at this point because it hasn't needed to. Everything's been looked after by a library systems group, and we're not expecting that to change anytime in the near future. Our experience with running Dataverse so far has been excellent. No problems whatsoever. Very mature, very stable. Updates have not been problematic. And there has, we've heard a couple of different times, there's an excellent user community. Space is still a little bit of a question mark for us because we're sort of early stage right now. There's no great gauge for how much storage we think we're going to need or might require down the road for researchers. What's an accurate picture right now, of course, may not be an accurate picture in just a couple of years. So making those projections is a little bit challenging. For the time being, we're bumping up library-based hosted storage. And since we've started developing RDM services, it's fair to say that we haven't had a research group that's come to us with more than we could handle. That's not to say that we've had a lot of inquiries just yet, but nothing has come to us that we thought we were over our head for. But it's definitely good to know that there are projects in the work, like for very large data sets, that'll make sure that we're in good state no matter what. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about outreach and assessment. Needs assessment, of course, is very important, and there's been great work done by members of the Portage Network here. Surveying, I think Dalhousie is a member of that initial survey that was led by Portage. We've been reluctant to do any surveying, partly because it's not been that long since we did a faculty survey. There was some discussion about research data management needs there. Generally speaking, the response was not quite as representative as we would have liked. But the big takeaway from us was that they definitely seem to be for research data management services. There was a place for research data management services. The responses that we got overwhelmingly indicated that researchers were generating what they defined as being research data, and the practices for storing, collecting, preserving that were all over the map. There was really no rhyme or reason to it. So that sort of an idea of having a guiding hand and a guiding set of resources was definitely something we could see working at UNB. So we may survey in the future, but currently we've been having more luck with just doing informal, if I can characterize it that way, outreach. That's not always an easy question to answer when you're developing new services. Who are the best people to be talking with first? UNB started off with their VP research, and that was followed up by a presentation at his suggestion to a dean's council. That was a meeting that was hosted by the Office of Research Services. Our initial message there was to begin with why and follow up with the what. What were we doing locally? What kind of resources and support could we offer? Our assumption was that they were really just going to be most interested in meeting funding publication requirements. And for practical purposes, that's probably largely true, but not exclusively true. They were definitely still interested in open access. They were interested in discovery layer. They were interested in reuse, both of their own data and of other people's data. Early advice that we got from the deans was quite useful. They said, very frankly, we're not necessarily the best people for you to be talking to, which we sort of knew anyway. We're not on the ground. We're not doing research anymore, with just a few exceptions. But they did give us pointers for who we should be talking to. They said, you can talk to a department. Worry about the faculty so much, they're too big, the attendance is not good. Tips like that were the things that we were sort of looking for. They also gave us tips for individual researchers that they said they're generating a lot of data or the research is data heavy, you might want to make contact with them. So that was a very, very useful meeting for us. In addition, members of the working group have been able to talk at faculty events and workshops. The libraries host an annual institute that gives us an opportunity to talk about new services. We talked about it there. They were able to speak at or even just simply be present at ORS-led workshops on funding and other funding application workshops, and that really gives us a great networking opportunity. We've already had some take-up and interest or questions of interest that followed from just those sorts of events. Just being there sometimes is a great way to start those conversations. I have to say too, it's been very useful for us to be able to say that we're a part of something bigger in terms of the RDM community across Canada. For us to be able to talk about Portage and say that people like the tri-agencies that are present at the table, CUCHI are present at the table, IT Services, Research Data Canada, that's sort of reassuring and gives us a little bit of an extra layer of credibility when we're talking to researchers across campus. Early adoption, we haven't had a major announcement to launch because we're not keen to make a big announcement about an empty repository just yet. We are keen to announce services. The informal networking certainly is building contacts through at the university. Some of the early interest is coming through those informal channels that I mentioned before, and or through some already established channels of communication. People that have worked with us or a data librarian in the past that have been involved with the Center for Digital Scholarship in different projects. These are the people that are starting to come back to us now to talk about research data management. So far, we've had interest at 3 different stages, where just to summarize, I guess, at different stages of the game. For people who had a completed data set, they submitted a publication, they just need a DOI and a place to put that. And I'll add to that too, that at least one of those cases, they had an opportunity to deposit their data with the publisher and chose not to. Instead, they were coming to us because they didn't want to deposit their data. They wanted to deposit with a local repository. In other cases, we've got somebody who is basically ready to start publishing, haven't published yet, but they are almost ready with one data set and are already talking to us about more that will be coming from the same lab. So building that relationship early had proven well. And the third one that I wanted to mention is really just our first one that we've been able to catch right out of the gate. Somebody who's just developing a research project wants to start talking about data management plans, and we've been able to touch base with them right from the beginning and to start developing services from the get-go. So up next, we're going to continue with our outreach efforts. The strongest interest and supports come from the Office of Research Services, which we're very grateful for. We'll continue to build on that relationship, start reaching out on the department level. Slightly tuned versions of the same presentation and talk that we gave for our deans, with a little more practical spin on it. And greater engagement also with their liaisons. The working group that we've had so far has been very, very useful. I think there's been a small selection of us that have been able to spend a little bit more time focused on research data, but we need more insight than that insular working group can provide us with alone. We'll continue to build partners and collections. Having a variety of early partners and adopters, I think, it makes it a bit easier to promote this service, to launch and start talking to people about it. And we're also looking forward to being a bigger part of federated initiatives like further. That's about all that I have to share. Are there any questions? I'll turn it over to Donald. Good, thank you.
I can see myself sort of destroying this whole Lord. So I'm going to share a bit about our story at UPEI and what we've done there. It's a little different. It's not data first. It's Islandora and how we've implemented research data management within the Islandora framework. We've got a long tradition of working with faculty at UPEI on their data requirements. We often provide virtual research environments for faculty, which are sort of insular to their own domain, often customized. They are very heavy resource-wise. They require a lot of staff time. And so for us, moving towards a more generic, I guess, form of research data management is a sustainable option. We still have and offer VREs, and people take us up on those offers whenever possible. When we developed our research data management plan, we included people from research services. They continue to sit on our guiding group, also work collaboratively with our ITSS services because we can't answer all researchers' requirements, and having those folks around the table can be helpful. We were lucky to have the opportunity to participate in the eScience Institute when we started seriously thinking about how we want to provide research data management services on campus. And we did survey the faculty. We had a number of face-to-face interviews with key stakeholders, and from that came back a set of requirements that would help guide us. One was the need or the desire for local file storage, the ability to share or publish their research data. In some cases, in other cases, they wanted to keep it closed and just have a place to put it. They were looking for planning tools, I'll say modestly. I think we were looking for planning tools so that researchers would come prepared with their needs, as opposed to their research grant is done, now where can we put our data? And so trying to offset that requirement early on and just provide a way to communicate with folks. And preservation requirements, long-term preservation or short-term. Does it need to live forever, or does it need to live for 5 years and then be destroyed? We were informed by the research data lifecycle, and we wanted to ensure that we supported the researcher through that process from concept, so from their plan to archiving, distribution, discovery, And from that, we basically did a mapping, sort of an asset mapping of what do we have already, what do we need to create. So there were a whole number of existing tools that were available, including our own expertise and knowledge of Islandora, but our community had created a whole bunch of other tools that we could leverage as well within the Islandora community, but also within the Drupal community, and we certainly used those. So at UPI, our approach was embed a data management planning tool. So we did this work before there was a portage. And so we created a data management planning tool as part of that. How do we provide local file storage? We leveraged the work that Simon Fraser had done with their research repository, and they had implemented Pt2, which is a open source local file storage system. And we leveraged Islandora as a preservation platform, as a publication platform, and as a discovery platform. Again, we pulled things from our own community. So Drupal comes with LDAP. So if you need to authenticate your faculty or your users, we tie into our own institutional LDAP to provide login for our faculty members. We leverage Drupal Forms API, so the service around the data management plan tool is built using Drupal Forms. Anyone who has some expertise with Drupal can edit the form. You don't have to be a developer or a programmer to change things, and it provides sort of an agile approach to that provision. Again, we used an existing community tool called SFU Dora. So the folks at Simon Fraser had developed a research data management platform in Islandora. We generalized that, so they had a lot of customizations, and we basically removed those things that either we didn't want to integrate or that were not necessary from our own use case, and were more generic so that anyone potentially could implement it. We used XML form builder, so there was a lot of discussion about metadata and metadata schema. So we can implement any metadata schema using XML form builder, and we selected the DDI 3.2 lifecycle schema and built a form interface around that, created transformations to Dublin Core and to DataSite. And yeah, so there's an existing OAI PMH tool that exposes our data to harvesting, if that's of interest. This is just an example from the data management planning tool. We were informed by DMP Online and DMP tool, and a lot of the work that was started around data management planning in Canada. So there were a lot of good examples. It allows us to embed guidance within the tool. Researchers can share their data management plans with others within the framework. They can save it and come back to it. So for us, it's sort of an engagement tool. So we'll start them on that discussion, maybe take them through it initially. Maybe they fill out the first few fields, which are sort of identity type fields, and then save it, and then they can come back to it. Or share it with a colleague. Maybe the colleague's going to finish filling it out. Pt2, I called it Pi2 for like 3 years because I was like, it's Pi2. But apparently it's pronounced Pt2. And we built some integrations between Islandora Drupal and that file service. It's secure in transit. The local store, so if you're a faculty member and you log into data.upei.ca, you get 10 gigabytes of storage by default. That's an arbitrary number that we set. Basically, we wanted to ensure that we provided the same amount of storage as Dropbox at the time. So this was entirely as a way to replace Dropbox within the researcher's workflow. Pi2 Sync, or Pt2 Sync, is a desktop tool. So if you use Dropbox, there's a Dropbox tool, a sync tool. There's a Pydio sync tool. And just to give a sense of transfers, so this is the web interface to Pydio. Pydio Sync is a desktop interface, and we've recently transferred almost 200 gigabytes of data using that tool for a single researcher. So it works quite well. You can interrupt it. It's useful. We integrated, as I said, Pydio with Islandora. I mean, a simplified deposit process whereby basically the researcher can either right-click or select a file, and there's an export or publish to the archive. They're presented with, again, the simplified form. And I often wonder, should we only show the file or the fields that are required, and then do the final work afterwards, add the subject headings and so on? But this is basically a set of DDI fields that are mostly required. There's a few that are extra. We wanted to ensure that a lot of our use cases are they deposit the data because they've got a journal publication. And so we've got items in the repository, in our institutional repository that could be linked here. And we provide a set of deposit types, whether it's public, embargoed, or archived. And I'm a little worried, you know, that I think when I think about risk, I go, will a researcher know what they're doing when they click that? I assume they do. But I often wonder about, to mitigate some of that, at this point, should we have some sort of process whereby we capture that, communicate with the user that we've got it, and we're about to publish this basically with public, just in case someone inadvertently releases data that shouldn't be released. Just because, you know, we might know what all this means, but at least this is a search result display. Again, you can customize this to whatever your requirements are. Data site DOI is automatically created if your data set is public or if it's private. And that data is sent to Data Site Canada and then disseminated to all the data sites. And this is the full record view. One of the things we capture are all the versions and the events around the data set. Again, thinking about the life cycle of that data set. And we've got a publication link. So this is the link to the article in the repository. This is just some examples of that data lifecycle capture, and it's available in the version tab. There's many other screens that are associated with this. Arbor is basically the data research management framework we've got at UPEI in the Compute Canada context. We're sort of trialing it there to see how it will work. And it's not working now. Apparently there's something going on with the network with Compute Canada and something's implemented. One of the things we're also working on at UPEI is something called CIDR, the Secure Island Data Repository, which is intended for researchers that might need to store their data where there is absolutely no network connection. They just need storage. It needs to be secure. You know, you got to go into the data center with your swipe card. You have the lock or the key to that lock to that data center vault. There's also a set of services that are connected to the internet but firewalled. So we have, at the moment, we've got Pydio behind the UPEI firewall, and that use case is for research groups. So data.upei is for the individual researcher, for research groups where potentially they may have larger amounts of data that they need to store. This is where their active data can be stored. Thinking about conversations with researchers, on CBC, they were interviewing a grad student about her research with teenagers, and she was storing her data on an encrypted flash drive, and that's a good thing. It's encrypted. But I said, let's contact this student, and maybe we can help the grad student with some data deposit options that might be a little more secure. And we're also, once the electrical piece gets done, we're also going to be having a Hadoop, so thinking about the processing or visualization of data as it goes. And Hadoop is just a big data framework that people can use. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
The FIDO tool, is that like UPI's institutional file sharing service?
It's not UPEI's, but it's the file sharing service we offer through the library, supported primarily by the library, but also ITSS.
And so is that what researchers use for the secure data sharing?
For secure data sharing?
Yeah, so if they have sensitive data, are they still able to use that?
So we don't specify what researchers can use with their space. So if they choose to put a file there, that's just as they might put it in Dropbox or some other service. So I think providing, I guess one of the other boxes, the requirements boxes, should have been education. So I think educating ourselves and researchers about where data might go. So it is secure in that you would have to log in order to see it. It's secure in that it's encrypted from point to point. But yes, they could store potentially sensitive data there.
The other question I have was, you mentioned the connection between that tool and your repository.
Yep.
Is this sending any additional information that can be reused in the repository?
As in, give me an example.
Like, for example, file versioning information or metadata sometimes.
So we don't capture and we don't, so we don't capture what happened in their active storage. When it gets transferred to the repository, there's a whole series of workflows that happen, including format identification, checksumming, yes, but we don't capture, whatever happened in their own space prior to that. But we do extract technical metadata file itself on deposit, and we store that as a data stream that is there and can be viewed. Yeah, I'd be happy to show you the back end if you'd like to see it. Okay.
So we are almost at the end of our time today. I offered that we'd have at the end of the day a little bit of time to offer for wrap-up questions for any of our presenters today. If there are any, yeah.
I'm interested to hear from all of the libraries that you've just presented. I'm interested to hear from all of the libraries that have just presented. Where do you see the role of the library ending and the role of your IT folks or your Office of Research beginning? And how do you ensure that you manage those expectations and work together with those other candidates?
Presenters want to take that up? Erin?
So for us at Dal, well, I guess we're pretty fortunate. Our IT, we have library IT services. Now it was called LITS, now it's ATS, Academic Technology Services. So they're right in the library and they do library related work, IT work. So we have a very close relationship with them. With the research office, we have we have monthly research data management, a small team meeting. So that's myself, Sarah Stevenson, and our ATS contact. We've invited Lee also because he's here. and then yeah, sorry, no, we invite Lee because he's great and he's amazing. But yes, and we're very fortunate. It's located on the Dell campus. So in developing some of this, he was a great resource to bring on. But also, before I came, Michael and a few others have been meeting with the research office. So we have a standing monthly meeting with the research office to join us. Sometimes they can't, they're double and triple booked, but to have them in the room and sometimes they change people, but they're there and we do have that open relationship with them. It's just to get them in the room and part of the team. I mean, it might not be for every meeting, but they're part of our team that we consult with. So that's relationship building, I guess, is how
I think it's just institutional capacity. So the library, our Robertson Library has a small development team as well. And so I think ITSS is happy for us to take on help with research data. There's a ton of challenges. What do you do with the researcher who comes to you with drone data and terabytes and terabytes of video, and what are you going to do about that? Well, yeah, so we're still trying to figure out a bunch of things around that.
Oh, one more. Peter? Last question.
The tradition in academia for people who are producing data is to often build a set of summary tables that go along with your publication. So when we talk about releasing data that goes with your article and meeting the requirements of the large number of publishers now who say you have to deposit your data, what that tends to mean for the researchers I've talked to is to create some sort of thumbnail summary, of half a dozen tables that sum up much larger data sets. So those get deposited, but the data itself doesn't necessarily even get pulled together. It is possible to write a data management plan that says, yes, I'll do a series of summary tables. For the people who are ingesting data already, how do you deal with this problem? I'm more concerned about getting too little data from researchers than I am about getting terabytes and terabytes of, we'll have the other problem at some point as well. But how do you ensure that the data, now I know that the UPEI, you're basically ingesting from the moment when the data is created. So you're working with data, with research management software. But how do you get the researchers to actually produce something that looks like a real data set rather than simply some summaries of data that will never see the light of day?
So I think a lot of those kinds of tables are defined by the publisher. So if you're looking for, they have to be able to have reproducible results. I think that will define what that data set looks like. So it can't be a summary. It has to be something substantial that allows another researcher basically to replicate the data or the results of the data. We can't really compel researchers to provide their data if they don't want to. The fact that they're providing summary data, step one, that's awesome. And I think showing the value, maybe there are citations to that data or other things that will encourage them to further deposit. But it is that, someone mentioned it before, trust. building trust with researchers. This is the trust relationships.
This is Jeff here. I don't know if you can hear me. You can hear me? Okay, that's good. I think it really is going to come back to communicating what we mean by data. And I think there is a range of understanding of what, on the part of researchers, as to what we mean by data. So we have everything from Peter's example of summary tables being seen by some researchers as data and suitable for the purposes of meeting deposit requirements, to the next, another level on the spectrum would be people who have what they call replication data, which would be, I'm going to provide and deposit the 5 variables from a much larger data set, that the 5 variables that were actually used to generate the tables in my paper, but the other 200 variables are still on my hard drive and not going to be released, right through to people who have the notion that data is data and this full data set would be worth depositing. So it's really going to become an education and communication piece, I think, to our researchers as we go through the curation process.
Thanks, Jeff. This is Donna. That's very helpful. So at this point, I'm just saying a few concluding remarks. Who would like to join me in disagreeing with Mike Smit? The research data management is very interesting. I would like to thank all of our speakers, Jeff, Lee, Amber, Corey, Jay, Mark, Mike, Erin, Jamie, and Donald. Thank you very much. That was fabulous. Thank you to Jamie for moderating. Very much. And to Cynthia for organizing. So there was a lot of buzz in the room. I think this is probably the first of several events we'll have like this. And I think there are some really great opportunities for CAAL to partner with COPL, OPAL, Portage, and float all boats, raise all boats, whatever that charming phrase is. So thank you to all of the participants. It was an action-packed afternoon, and we were glad you could join us. Thank you. Thank you.
And please don't forget to fill out your evaluation forms. You can just leave them on the desk, or you can put them up to the front, whatever you want.